Good morning, everybody. My name is Ross Sandler. I'm a professor of law here at New York Law School and director of the Center for New York City Law, and I welcome you to our City Law Breakfast and also to our new building. I see that a number of people here are people new to our breakfast series and perhaps new to this building, and at the end of the breakfast at 9:30, I will be happy to take whoever would like to go on a short tour of the building, up and down to the 5th floor and the balcony up there and down to the auditorium and see some of the classrooms. So if anybody would like to do that, I'd be happy to lead the tour, and we'll just meet at the exit and go, and it'll take 10 minutes or so. Now, we've also started this year to only announce our breakfast by email as a way of saving a few trees and perhaps a little money. And so if you did not get an email address, please leave your card, and we'll be happy to put you on our list. Also, we are delighted when people forward the emails to other people who may not be on the list. So you may feel free to let anybody know you would like. These are open and public, and we're delighted to have as many people come as possible, and even more delighted when word gets spread by people who are on our list. These breakfasts are sponsored or co-sponsored by Con Edison, who's been a co-sponsor from the very beginning, Verizon, also almost from the beginning, the law firm of Greenberg Traurig, and I see some people from Greenberg Traurig here today, and welcome you, and the Murray Goodgold Foundation. The next breakfast will be on November 20th, when Linda Gibbs will be here to talk about the issues on the social services of the city. Today we have the Commissioner of Buildings, and as everybody who has followed city government knows, it's one of the more difficult positions in government, even though its mandate is absolutely essential for the public safety of the city. In one of the courses I teach, I have all the students read a book written by a fellow who was the editor of the Garment Workers newsletter about the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. And of course, that is one of the major events that leads to the kinds of issues that the Buildings Department deals with. And the students are absolutely amazed at the importance of the issues that the Buildings Department, the Fire Department, deal with in public safety of buildings. And yet, we all know it's one of the most difficult mandates to follow through and to actually deliver on the public service mandate. In the last, during the Bloomberg administration, certainly there have been major innovations at the department, and Robert LiMandri has been a major part of it, coming to the department in 2002. He's been deeply involved in the innovations, the technology innovations, information innovations at the department, dealing with not only the public safety issues, but the public information issues, and the delivery of their important services on building permits and safety in the city's streets and buildings. He comes to the position from the private sector, where he worked with corporations and real estate industry in developing programs for them, and after a 19-year career in the private sector, came to the department and became acting commissioner about 18 months ago, and was appointed commissioner about 8 or 10 months ago. So we're delighted to have Robert LiMandri come to these breakfasts and talk about the important issues at the Department of Buildings. Commissioner LiMandri.
Thank you, Ross. This is some slick building, huh? It's a pretty nice setup you have. I would like to thank Ross and his lovely wife Alice for this opportunity to speak to you today. You know, the department has a very difficult mandate, as you know, and we're going to discuss how Buildings Department is making it safer and increasing integrity throughout the department and across the industry as well. We've been raising standards across the board since day one of the Bloomberg administration. And I'm here to tell you that transparency trumps corruption. You know, you can't hide when there's a wide open space of information for people to see. And we've come a long way, but we have a ways to go. No doubt everyone here has read about the 6 former inspectors that have been recently arrested. You know, human nature will always provide temptation and the opportunity, but we are staying vigilant, and we're doing everything we can, and I'm going to tell you, we're not backing down. For example, our new inspector tracking program will have a profound impact on integrity. We've fully activated the GPS technology in all our inspectors' cell phones, and we're live with online tracking. This means we're now tracking our 379 inspectors individually by inspection team. We can get a snapshot of every person at any moment while they're on duty. We also know when it's too quiet because supervisors get an automatic email when their inspectors' devices stop sending a signal. We've raised the industry standards, and GPS is raising our own. When there's an accusation that we weren't at a site, that we weren't there, now we can prove that we were there. Our investigations unit can run a breadcrumb report, I love this term, and see exactly where our inspector is or was during a shift. Looking at the map, watch the red dot. We can see the steps the inspector took and cross-check it with his route sheet. And again, transparency trumps corruption. Certainly tracking can raise privacy concerns, and I'm here to tell you that we only track while he's on duty. Don't laugh. GPS, you know, we'll get a call from his wife. GPS brings our agency to a new level. It improves integrity, emergency response, and safety. It's easier to route the closest inspector in an emergency, and getting our teams to sites fast is keeping New Yorkers safer. As you know, in less than a year, 2 major concrete testing firms were indicted by the Manhattan DA. They're charged with falsifying concrete testing documents and not performing required tests. Think about that. The structural integrity of our buildings is called into question. Having other law enforcement agencies focusing in on these issues is vital to get the industry to change their behavior. To address this issue, we've launched a new concrete unit. This team is dedicated to concrete operations and testing, and they're already conducting spot checks on testing operations at job sites. We've now developed and issued a new protocol to retest all 82 test well sites under our jurisdiction in the DA's indictment. And now I'm proud to talk about that we have been partnering with the Department of Design and Construction that's going to build its own concrete testing laboratory. Not only that any city agency can do its own testing, but this department will go ahead and spot check private developers as well. Finally, we're making it harder for people to get away with cutting corners. We've strengthened the documents the concrete industry is filing with us. Therefore, every time they file a document with us, they'll be building a record of integrity, a record of accountability. You know, we go ahead and scan all the documents now. All those documents that get filed with the department everyone complains about, all of a sudden they become the record that doesn't get lost in a file somewhere in some room. They go online to see them, and all these documents are there to hold ourselves and the industry accountable. And I have to tell you that I have to thank Mayor Bloomberg for this tool. We've been investing more than $29 million of infrastructure in technology projects, along with our unbelievable team back at the Department of Buildings. We've opened the department's doors virtually to anyone who uses a computer. This is our foundation. It gave New Yorkers easy access to information they have a right to see. And I can tell you that I challenge you to find any other agency that's provided this information to the public so easily. And today, I'm proud to say that as of July, we've become the first city in the United States to put zoning diagrams online. Architects and engineers are now required to submit drawn-to-scale images that clearly show how their projects relate to the street. This means New Yorkers can better understand what's being built in their neighborhoods. People care about their neighborhoods, and these diagrams are part of our development challenge process. Bottom line, we're putting more information online about approved construction projects, uploading the information earlier for everyone to see, and formalizing the challenge process. What's more, by posting our approvals online, the key to this discussion is we're creating a detailed zoning resource, something the city does not have for the complex zoning that we have in this city. You'll see firsthand how this department interprets the zoning, and you can use it to hold us accountable going forward, and also the engineers and architects that use it. Just as you look at cases to understand how a judge may rule in a civil or criminal court proceeding and use it as precedent, you will now be able to use it when applying the zoning resolution. The development challenge process applies to new buildings, enlargements, and any project where a building's bulk is changed. This means you'll have an in-depth information on upcoming projects when there's still lines on paper, not half-built buildings. You know, no one wins when there's a half-built building and the Department of Buildings comes in and shuts the building down. You've got a dormant site, which is a blight on the neighborhood. You have workers out of a job, and you have tenants that are potentially out of a home that they've just purchased. Now posting diagrams online holds everyone accountable. Architects, engineers have to give us good plans, and we have to make good zoning decisions. And when mistakes happen, there are opportunities for all of us to build the skills on how we interpret this maze, our own and for the industry. This is what I mean by raising the standards across the board, not just at this department. In fact, we've been raising standards across the board other than in zoning. We've just identified 66 new ways to raise the standards on high-risk construction safety standards. Our HRCO, which focused on concrete, crane safety, and excavations. And this is on top of what we've already been able to accomplish with the help of many of you in the room, which is the New York City Construction Codes that was passed in 2007, effective in 2008. We now have 12 new safety laws on top of that to expand our enforcement power. The centerpiece of this legislation is mandating safety registration numbers for construction. Now, believe it or not, many of you in the room probably already know this, but if you want to go ahead and do a kitchen renovation, you need to have someone that's licensed by the city, DCA. But if you want to build a 50-story tower, there's no registration process. Starting on December 1, we will not issue a contractor a permit for a new building, concrete or demolition work, if he doesn't have a safety registration number. Thanks to the City Council Speaker Quinn, this is a monumental step moving forward. It is going to help us hold the industry accountable to higher standards. We've also got something coming down the road, which you probably have heard, the Stalled Sites Bill. City Council just passed it on Wednesday, and I testified in the support. In fact, right around the corner, Leonard Street is a perfect example of a stalled site. Everyone knows the status of our economy. Fewer construction projects are underway. Plus, the uncertain credit market has halted many projects. So far, we've documented 450 sites, and I expect that to grow. For those properties that have been maintained poorly, it's better for everyone if they can get back to work as soon as the financing is in place. Anyone who lives near a construction site knows why this is important. Stalled sites aren't just ugly. They undermine the neighborhood's character, her property values, and history has taught us that a completed building is much safer than one under construction. The Stalled Sites program will help offset these problems. Applicants opting in will show us how they're going to maintain their properties to protect the public. And we're monitoring these projects to make sure property owners are keeping their end of the deal. If they don't keep their sites safe, their permits will lapse. That means developers whose projects started under the '68 building code, stalled for more than a year, would be forced to start it all over again using the 2008 codes. They'll have to redesign the building, refile the project, go through the approval process again. And you and I both know how long that can take. They may even have to demolish the work that's already been completed to meet the new building code requirements. Now, if they maintain their sites, we will give them permits for up to a 4-year grace period. When a developer has a valid permit in hand, he will have a better chance at getting financing from a bank or investors in the future. And I'm going to tell you, this is a much stronger incentive than violations. Mayor Bloomberg and Speaker Quinn have given us new tools, new funding, and new power to improve this construction safety, and we're making it happen. Few people realize that we've grown from 700 to just over 1,100. But we do more than examine plans, issue 118,000 permits a year, inspect 440,000 construction sites a year. We help other agencies as well meet their mandates. Let me give you some examples. We inspect sites with the fire department. We've issued more than 1,000 violations for smoking on the job site. We enforce the Parks Department rules so that this city can have 1 million newly planted trees. Our inspectors love this one. They don their bulletproof vests late at night and work with the police department. What they do is they go out and make sure that nightclubs are safe for occupancy. It's a very important part of the mandate to make sure that New Yorkers are safe. And of course, everyone has a story about being on this tour. The latest, the one I can tell you about, is about how the inspector was asked why he was with the police department. And when he responded to the party goer, he got a big fat kiss. Because he said he was there to make sure that they were safe. Now, it's a bit of a joke that he got the big fat kiss, but what that shows you is that people expect this city and this department to keep them safe, whether it's on a construction site or in a club. We're also inspecting amusement park rides. More than 1 million people visit amusement parks in this city each year. Just recently at St. Teresa's Carnival in the Bronx, there was an accident. During our investigation, we found that a kiddie ride derailed when a joint failed. We also determined that the 68 code during our investigation did not require these types of rides to undergo non-destructive testing. Now we're going to strengthen the ride testing, and we've acted. What we have to do is just because we find something wrong doesn't mean that we can't change it and raise the standards. Landmarks Preservation Commission, my friends, Bob and I, we're making sure that we protect the landmarks of this great city. Once a building is designated, it triggers a new requirement to anyone applying for a permit to do work. They can't move forward until they first get the certificate of no effect or appropriateness from LPC. And as you know, as part of the Plan NYC, we are part of a very important part of allowing people to move towards sustainability. If you look at the carbon footprint and where it comes from in the city, 80% of our carbon footprint comes from buildings. And you can't just look at new buildings, you have to look at existing buildings as well. So we've put into place our Sustainability Board. The Building Sustainability Board is there to help adopt technologies. This field is moving so quickly that people can't react quick enough. National standards aren't there. The testing isn't there. So we're there to try to facilitate that. And finally, something that I love to talk about is our Edward Shedd International Design Competition. This is something that, has been, everyone has a story about their shed experience. You're either running from shed to shed like I was yesterday trying to stay out of the rain, or we've seen people hang chandeliers from them to beautify them on the Upper West Side. But, you have to go back in time and think about it. These things have been around in their existence, in their design since the 1950s. There's actually over 1 million linear feet of shed in this city right now. And of course, they really don't help the pedestrian experience, and they also don't show the great buildings that we have at this city. So we invited architects and engineers, designers, and students from across the world to compete. We got 164 submissions from 28 countries, and I'd love to take you through 3 of the finalists. The first is Urban Cloud. A team from KNE Studio in New York created this. Instead of designing it from the ground up, it's anchored from the top and drops down. Lets pedestrians walk on sidewalks that are completely unobstructed. The urban cloud is hung by a light gauge steel and uses LED technology, which means it costs less to light. There's also, I love them, they name them themselves, the urban umbrella. It's Jetsons-like, if you've ever seen the cartoon, you know, where everyone's flying around. It sort of comes up and opens up like an umbrella. Young-Won Choi, a Korean student at the University of Pennsylvania, who's getting his master's in architecture and is already an engineer, has designed this innovative structure. Made of carbon fiber, opens up like an umbrella, letting more air and light into the sidewalk. And finally, the tripod module. Not like, hopefully these guys aren't Red Sox fans. These guys are from Massachusetts, the Exchange Architects in Brookline. Even though it rests on the street, it uses a translucent material to protect pedestrians, but as you can see, opens up and allows for light to come in, allows for better signage, and allows for retail to get better exposure than they do today. So, you know, in closing, we are here to protect New Yorkers from the dangers they can't always see. And we are raising the standards across the board and raising them not only for ourselves but the industry. So that's my bit, and I'll take some questions.
Very good. Well, we have microphones here and there, and we ask you to go to the microphone. I know there's a lot of people here, some of whom I don't know, and I know that you follow this area closely. I hope that you will take the opportunity to ask a question and share your own interests with the rest of us. Also, on the table are copies of City Law and City Land, our two publications, and I urge you to take a look at them, and they do cover all of the city land use issues comprehensively and much of city administrative law and city law, and I hope that you take a look at them and perhaps subscribe. They are part of what supports this program. So we'll take the first question on this side. Yes.
Good morning.
Would you please state your name so we...
What if the mic works?
The mic works.
Okay. My name is Harold Weinberg. I'm a licensed professional engineer. I've been filing plans at the Department of Buildings since 1961, 48 years. I want to talk to you about raising standards.
Just don't point at me, okay?
No,
when
I'm
you
not
do it.
pointing at
Okay.
you. Commissioner, I'm not pointing at you.
Okay, I just want to make it clear.
I'm just raising my hand
All right.
descriptively. I want to tell you about 2110 66th Street, Brooklyn, New York, for which I filed an alteration through a curb cut. It was approved on June the 10th, 2006 by one of your plan examiners. Subsequently, in January of this year, I received a letter from one of the deputy commissioners in Brooklyn of intent to revoke. From that time on, I continued to work with one of the plan examiners. When it was approved on July 7th, 2009, on July 17th, 2009, I signed the TR1, signed the job off, at least I thought so. A special enforcement unit guy from Queens went out and he said, my plan for a curb cut doesn't show a patch of a garden, and the second story enlargement back is a little out of scale. I revised the plan, corrected it, submitted it to the chief plan examiner who approved the plan. I'm coming to the end. I'm coming to the end. Please.
Because otherwise they're going to do that.
No, I'm coming right to the end.
You know, I'm used to this. I don't know about you guys, but go ahead. Let's get to the end.
My client gets a violation and an ECB hearing. I went to see the chief plan examiner. He emails Queens. Queens says it's a self-cert. It was not a self-cert. I got an email back apologizing. Your Queens plan examiner called to apologize. Fine, I signed the job off. My client gets a new violation, sends in an AEU2, gets it dismissed. Last week, guess what happened? They got a $2,500 penalty. That's called due diligence on your part.
Okay, so I'm not so sure if I'm going to respond, but I will tell you that I would like to, if you don't. Is that okay? So the one thing that you can sit down. That's all right. Because you're not allowed to go to the mic again. What's that? I'll write a commissioner's order. Would you take care of that, Stephen? Anyway, you know, one of the things that we have been doing is we have created specialized teams that are out there, and, you know, curb cuts are, you know, certainly a topic of conversation. Anyone in the room that lives in Brooklyn or has worked in Brooklyn, my past borough commissioner, Susan Hinkson, is here, who's now on the Board of Standards and Appeals, could talk long and hard about our plight of parking in Brooklyn. But one of the things that we have been doing is we have been coming down hard on identifying those who are not following the rules. Now, sometimes people get caught up in it, but I think through that conversation I heard, there were some issues with the plan and how it was built. And what we want to do is we want to provide for opportunities to identify when people are facilitating or enabling a problem. So a year and a half ago, the state gave us the ability, through a hearing, to be able to take an architect or an engineer who is licensed by the state of New York to a hearing if they are found falsely filing documents with this department. And I think you all know the issue with professional certification. That is a right I can take away without the state. But what you have to remember is that there are some people who operate in a rogue fashion, who are particularly doing things and they don't really care. And what you have to do is you have to show them that there are consequences. There are administrative consequences, and that there are criminal and civil consequences. So we are doing our best to deal with the administrative consequences. And so we are taking engineers and architects to administrative trials when we find that they are not following the rules. And what that means is if we're found by a judge that we are right, we can take away their right to file in this city because the state is not responding, okay? And they do not have the resources to do it. So we are here and we will do that. We're doing it to contractors, we're doing it to our own employees, and we'll do it to architects and engineers. Because you have to go to these meetings and you sit through and listen to these people talk about what goes on their block. We have a community in Brooklyn who doesn't think they need to follow the rules. And you've got three people. You've got the architect or engineer, who's the enabler. You've got the contractor, and you have the developer or the homeowner. And they think that they can do whatever they want. And we are not going to allow that. We are just not. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect, and sometimes it doesn't always work out, but we are not going to stand here and just allow it to happen. We're going to do everything we can. So if the DA has to do something, that's great. The Brooklyn DA, Hines, arrested and found guilty the man who put the guy in the hole that died on a construction project. Those are the kinds of things that have to happen. As well, we have to be more vigilant on an administrative side. So I'm sorry that you went through the process, but sometimes people get caught up in it. But we have to make sure that people understand that there are rules to be followed. Yes.
Good morning. Thank you very much. My name is Sarah Stewart, and I live a few blocks from the first crane or the first major crane accident 18 months ago, 2nd Avenue and 51st Street. And my question to you is, when is that half-built building going to come down by somebody else's hands besides just falling down? It's in terribly deteriorated condition. It's just derelict. The
new construction site?
That new construction site partly finished, and the terraces are at sickening angles. The metal is rusting away. The concrete looks as if it's deteriorating day by day, and it's just a danger and a hazard to the community. The building needs to come down.
Well,
that half-built mess.
Well, we do know that. I can tell you that we know that we haven't seen any new plans by any developers. We have a routine that we go ahead and inspect that property. We also have
Respecting meaning, I'm sorry.
Inspect, I'm sorry.
Inspect, thank you.
We inspect it on a regular basis. The idea there is to make sure that no conditions are changing. A concrete and reinforced concrete structure, we had done some remedial work and ordered some remedial work maybe 4 or 5 months ago that dealt with the balconies. We made sure that all of the debris that was on the floors that is part of the construction process was removed. The fire department and ourselves have gone through the building, and we continue to go through the building. We're going to make sure that it stays safe, and if there's anything in particular, I have someone in the back. Donald can just take down any particular notes that you see that you felt like we haven't addressed. But I will tell you that we have a team that's inspecting it to make sure it's safe.
Any hopes of seeing it gone?
Well,
we know that the foundation wasn't deep enough. We know that the building was not properly done.
I don't want to speculate about how deep the foundation was based on what they were going to build. What I would suggest is that I do know that the council member in the district, Council Member Lappin, and the community board, and Scott Stringer, and we're in constant contact with them. They have reached out and talked directly to the developer and the receiver. There's a bank receiver involved as well. So, we certainly can get you the information if you want to talk to them directly to get more details than what we have. Okay?
Right,
Thank you.
To go. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Bruce Ehrman. I'm co-chair of the Landmarks Committee of this Community Board 1 in Manhattan. And I do appreciate your remarks about more administrative hearings, because there are rogue architects that have been parading around for the whole last boom, seemingly with impunity. Some of them also galling the Landmarks Preservation Commission. I know that's not what I want to ask you about, though. I want to ask you about your remarks on the new abandoned site security program. I am involved in real estate, but this site around next to this building that you cited is a perfect example of what galls myself and this community board in regard to this new. I guess it's actually been enacted this week. This new law. There's a site that is removed from the community. This is probably the only Western city, the only industrialized Western city in the world where developers purely do the city planning, essentially. There is no massive centralized city planning that involves landmarks and involves site zones. Developers build the city, which it's always been that way in New York. That's fine. But here's a site that the foundation was put in time for the expiration of the tax abatements. It was smoothed over. It was surrounded by a fence. It's very clean. And now that developer, who has no relationship to the community and really never responded to the community during the whole plans, he's building a 60-story building in an FAR 5 or 6. Those are the two zones here. This block was excluded from the Landmarks District, is given a 4-year pass. Were it not for this community board, as I understand, that law would have allowed an open-ended pass. But there was a restriction put on for 4 years now.
So
Same goes for 50 West Street.
So let me just, because I see where you're going.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things. One is that the 4-year pass that you're describing deals only with code issues. In other words, if there's a zoning issue that they have not vested, it does not grant them the zoning vesting. If they were granted zoning a year ago or 6 months ago, that's their requirement. And if they need to and they don't complete it within, I think it's 2 years, they actually have to go back to the Board of Standards and Appeals and get the approval to continue. So this is purely about code.
Well, that is a distinction that I had.
I'm sorry.
This came up at the community board level. I mean, right across the street, there's a co-op that's in trouble and can't fix its sidewalk. I mean, is the city going to give them a pass to help them in the next year while they get an extended loan?
What the local law does, I mean, like, look at the big picture is you got a hole in the ground, okay?
It's not a hole, it's a level site.
It's a level site.
Yeah.
With a big fence around it.
That's right.
Okay. You like the fence?
A hole in the ground is Franklin Place.
You like
That's
the
a mess.
fence?
Do I like the fence? probably more than a 60-story building in
Okay.
an FAR 5. But
Anyway, as of right development is allowed to move forward. I'm going to tell you that it's better to have someone with a building permit in their hand when they have to go back to the credit markets. If they don't, and they have to go back to the credit market and say, well, I have this half-built site or partially built site, and I don't have a valid permit, and I did this redesign, and I'm going to go back to the Department of Buildings, which is going to take 6 months to go ahead and get an approval, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're building in a time frame that is going to slow this. You know, we have to rebuild this city. And someone that got stuck in the middle of the credit crisis, what we need to do is we need to facilitate it to move forward.
there's the nub of the argument, and that's fine. But to frame it as something good for the neighborhood is
Well, I'm going to tell you, you happen to be fortunate. There are a lot of other people, like this woman over here, that has a half-built building. So it's a bit different.
Henry Stern, I'm a retired city employee. It's a Senate for Tier 1. Yes.
It's a great city, isn't it?
Yeah,
I love this place, too.
it certainly is. My question is this. When I was first appointed executive director of the Parks Department in 1966, which here is 43 years ago, Chuck Merdler was appointed buildings commissioner. And this was the first year of the Lindsay administration. And he said he was going to design a new uniform for buildings inspectors which would have no pockets. And
You know,
so-
I read this article. Go ahead.
You wrote that. Now, in the ensuing 43 years, I have read so many times, you can't remember each one, incidents of corruption in the buildings department, more proportionately than any other city agency, considering its size. Now, you're a new fellow, and you're an honest fellow, and since you're not an
I
architect...
appreciate that you're saying that. Did you get that? Go ahead.
To the best of my knowledge. But I
It comes back in spades, Henry.
I believe it. I believe it. The Bloomberg administration has a good reputation for integrity. Now, why do these thieves or criminals or bribe recipients seem to congregate over such a long period of time? Not only you're new, in the buildings department. And the latest, in terms of, first brought into the mafia in it for the first time. Could you tell me which mafia family has the buildings department in its jurisdiction?
Well, now we know, right? Go ahead.
Well, I didn't read can you tell me that? I don't.
It was reported
Yes.
by the New York Times and by the DA that there were, out of the 6 employees, there were 2 that were tied to the Lucchese family.
The cases. They're the ones who did in Pelletieri. Okay. Well, tell us, why is the buildings, over the years, has the buildings department appeared to be a magnet for dishonest, bribe-taking employees? Why?
Well, we could probably have a whole session on this. But one of the things, I think you have to sort of look across the board. In construction, there are, in order to develop this city, there are many different players. And there has been a history, granted. But one could take the opposite look in saying that there's been a history of finding the corruption as opposed to there is corruption. One of the things that I will tell you that's been a hallmark of this administration is that we have been working very closely with the Department of Investigation. And we have been working diligently to root out corruption. And one could make the argument that because of our diligence, we are finding it. And it also suggests that although it's centered around this department, it might suggest that the industry has a problem as well. So not just between the city employee and particular person, but within its own ranks. So what I'm here to tell you is that, you know, we have partnered, I have worked very closely with Commissioner Gilhern to make sure that we do everything we can. And just because it's happened in the past doesn't mean I'm just going to throw up my hands and say, well, there's nothing I can do about it. We're going to do everything we can. And I will tell you that buildings inspectors were not wearing uniforms when I showed up at the department. Okay, so someone else decided that they were going to wear them, and at some point they stopped wearing them. Our guys need to be able to be visible on the job site, right? I'm not going to talk about pockets, but we're going to talk about technology that we're going to use that's going to prove when they're there, that's going to document what they do, and is also going to document every other person that interfaces with us. Because, you know, it always takes two, Henry. Okay? So he's on the receiving end. There's somebody on the other end. And we're not going to tolerate that. You know, no one covered 2 days after all of that broke. No one covered in a big way the story about how one of our inspectors was offered a bribe, went out to the car, called DOI, went back in, was wired, and they arrested him. And the DA is going to prosecute this guy. I'm telling you, people only want to see what they want to see. No one's covering all the other times that we're tipping them off. So I would suggest that we are doing a lot of work, and that's why you're seeing it.
I see. Well, I appreciate your efforts. I'm not critical of you.
No, I know you're not. I just get a little passionate about it, that's all.
I know. And I guess when the inspector came and turned in the guy, it was in the paper. It was like man bites dog.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
I want to follow up a little bit on that. I was interested in the idea that the inspectors are now carrying the GPS and you are tracking them. Could you just tell us a little bit about how you were able to convince them as a unionized force? I believe they're unionized. What kind of negotiations went into that, and what kind of checks or experiments or issues do you expect to come from that?
Well, it sort of goes like this. You know, we have an idea, we want to do something, and we talk about it. And then we tell them we're going to do it. I mean, the issue is that, you know, when you're a city employee, it can work both ways. It can work on one side and the other. One is that no one ever remembers that you want to be able to prove that you're doing your job. When an accusation comes, and boy, is it easy to point the finger, I want to make sure that my people have the opportunity to say, no, I was there. And, you know, when you talk to the people that do, we have really good people that work with us. And I want to make sure that we don't focus on the 6 guys who fall from grace here. There are a lot of good people, and a lot of you in the room have worked with a lot of them and know how hard they work. And they know that they have integrity. And they work for some of the people in this room. You have to remember that what we want to do is we want to make sure that they can hold their head up high, they can wear the uniform proudly. And what's most important is that when an accusation comes, we can say, wait a minute, that's not what this information tells me, so what's going on here? There used to be a time when we used to get pointed at the reason for all the delays in the entire development process. Well, we took that away by publishing all the information online. So as a developer, you could see whether you got your approval or disapproval, not that you had to ask your expediter. We also took it away when we said you dial 311 and you get an appointment. You know, there are many opportunities where we've made it completely transparent, where everyone has to be accountable. When we write a violation, it goes on the property profile under actions. You want to do your due diligence, it's there. You want to see who's doing the right thing, it's there. You want to see when we're making a mistake, it's there. You know, and what's important is to understand that if you're gonna move this thing if you're going to move this agency somewhere else to a different level, you got to call everybody in and you say, okay, here's the new playing field. And the new playing field is we're gonna make it all transparent. So when I'm the one that is holding you up from doing the construction project and we haven't done it, you'll see that. When we've approved a plan inappropriately, you'll see that. When we've written a reconsideration or a determination, you'll see that. But you'll also see everyone else in the process. When we took away this piece of paper that the subsurface plumbers used in order to get paid, and we put it all online, you know what the first thing they said was, hey man, you're taking away my ability to collect my money. We said, what do you mean? He said, well, we don't get paid until we deliver this card that you give us to the contractor. I said, well, you know what? You're holding him ransom if you don't give him the card, aren't you? You need to figure out a different way to get paid. You need to get paid up front, or you need to hold 10% back, not the whole thing. So people have to change their business process. When we put plumbing inspectors online, we made the plumbing industry get computers. 4 years ago, they couldn't see anything. And what did they say? The guy never came to do the inspection. Now we have a record of when we came. We give a record to the guy in the field. We print it out. He takes his mobile device. He puts it in the dock. That's because wireless wasn't really big 4 years ago. Put it in the dock. It gets uploaded into Biz, and every contractor that's on that job can see whether we were there or not and whether we gave them a sign-off or not. Because why? Because they're fighting amongst themselves, and they're going to delay their own process. It has nothing to do with me. So everyone has to be held accountable. And we've been doing it for the last 4 years or so, and we have a tremendous team that's doing it. So that's our answer. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Vanessa Gruen, and I work at the Municipal Arts Society. And I want to commend you for the co-sponsoring the Urban Shed competition. I think this is a very positive step. In the past, it's been illegal to have advertising signage on these sidewalk sheds. And recently, Melinda Katz introduced in the City Council a bill that would permit advertising on sidewalk sheds, and that would be through a permit basis, and the Buildings Department would issue these permits. I wonder if you could give us your opinion on whether or not this is a good idea to return advertising to these sidewalk sheds, and whether or not it's a good idea to have building inspectors spend their time checking to see whether or not a permit is whether or not the advertising on the shed is legal and has a permit.
Wow, you really got me, don't you?
No.
Anyway, so this is the way it is today. Many of you know you can only advertise or talk about what we call accessory signage on a shed by a certain dimension of the business below. Our position today is that the law doesn't provide for advertising, and so there is none. And you may recall we went through a sweep maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and we basically took all the advertising down. We have gotten a tremendous amount of support from the council speaker's office to raise penalties. These penalties used to get thrown out of ECB court because what they would do is they'd put up a sign, we'd show up, we'd write the VIO, they'd show up to ECB court and show a picture of it taken down. Well, that's because their contract with the building owner was taken down. Today, we are going hard after people that are putting up advertising on buildings. We have a building in Brooklyn, I'm proud to say, that has $1 million of fines. These guys need to understand that they need to follow the law. My position on whether advertising should be on a sidewalk shed or not is not for me to answer. What I will tell you is what the law says is we will enforce.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning. Martin Hallwall here. Been involved in land use litigation from the community side. I want to talk about the information technology that you have. First, I think your department is very transparent and has a lot of accomplishments in what you put on the website. And every time I look at it, I'm pleased and come to make suggestions for more. When I have done what I do, I go to the department and pull paper files, and I will track zoning compliance or non-compliance correspondence. Is it possible, unless it's already been done, that the correspondence can also be scanned and placed online?
Well, one of the things that we're doing through our what I'll call the development challenge process is first we put up, the way it works is we put up the diagram. After we go back and forth and say, yes, it's approved, the diagram goes up. It ages 45 days. At the end of that 45 days, we collect all of the challenges to that project. Because what we want to do is we want to get rid of all of this correspondence that goes around the world 180 days. It either goes to the mayor, it goes to me, it goes to the borough commissioner, it goes to Fatma Amir, who I rely on heavily, and it goes to the borough commissioner, deputy, to complain. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to fill out this form. You're going to send it in, anonymously or not. We wait the 45 days. At the end of the 45 days, we open up all the challenges. We rule on the challenges, and we rule on the project. And then we post it all online. So there you have it. All of the correspondence complaints about some particular project will be online for each particular project. So if we get 30 challenges, we'll sign them. We'll basically say what we think about the challenge, and we'll post it online. And so therefore you can see either who's challenged it or what they challenged, so that you can understand the process.
I wonder if I'm talking about something different.
May I interrupt? We're coming to the end. Are there two people over here? I want to make sure we get the people standing, get the chance.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Dominic Chieco with Milrose Consultants. I'm a code consultant and expediter. I echo, and I actually applaud the department's transparency initiatives because it makes for life easier for everyone's lives in the business. But I wanted to comment on what this first gentleman was speaking of, and that is your latest initiative, which is to inspect self-certified applications. I know the.
I love this project.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah.
And I understand the intention is to rout out those individuals that abuse the filing privilege, because that one bad apple spoils the barrel. We all get that. The issue, though, that is at hand is that over the last 2 months we've gotten a dozen projects where the professionals were not abusing the privilege, and they get caught in the dynamic of the building process. And what I mean by that is buildings aren't static, interiors are dynamic. So what happens is an inspector goes out unannounced, appears at the building, has to be taken through by a building manager to a space that was constructed. The constructed space matches the plan, but the existing built environment doesn't, because furniture systems change. You don't need a permit for that. So rather than it be an objection, and I'm not talking about a specific job, in general, these are suggestions to make it more wholesome. Instead of issuing an objection to a plan, there's an ECB violation that you now have to go to court for. There's a 10-day notice to revoke, where this professional is in the process of the construction process, and the building is now on a hold pattern and is prevented from receiving C of O's and that type of thing. So while the initiative is a good one, because you need to rout out those individuals that cause these problems, the large cast of the net is capturing or causing innocent corporations, professional corporations, to have to go through this and then possibly get their license censured. So I was wondering what you would say about the dynamic nature and how to lighten up the heavy hand on this initiative.
Well, one of the things you probably realize is that we have a very limited staff, and the number of applications that come through our doors is huge. We have found, you illustrate a particular example. I have dozens, and we probably should have brought some of them. You would be frightened of the kinds of things we're finding through the self-certification process and through this new effort that we have. But we do have a heavy hand, and we are trying to set a new standard. But if you have any particular thoughts about how you think we might be able to make it easier for people to comply or for us to respond so that it's quicker, certainly we're interested in that. We are, for example, right now, certificates of correction for ECB. As you know, if you get an ECB fine, you go to ECB hearing and you pay your fine or you don't, but you also have to come to the department and certify that you've taken care of the violation. What we care about is that you take care of the violation actually, not whether you paid the fine or not. And so we are working towards a way to get those into the system without stopping you by reviewing it first, allowing you to certify correction and us to review after, so as to speed the process up. And if there's something like that that you're suggesting, you know, we'd be willing to hear that. And Donald is in the back somewhere. There he is, if you could give that to him. Also, we have an email address if you have a suggestion. Sometimes people are afraid to speak out. They're afraid of a focus or retaliation. You can send us an anonymous email to opsredesign@buildings.com. Is that right? Operations with an S, redesign.com, .nyc.gov. And we'll take suggestions that way as well. Thanks.
We've been down that road, and it works, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. This has been a very stimulating program. Stay right here. Stay. I want to thank Commissioner LiMandri. This has been a really stimulating program, and I'm very happy to see people that don't necessarily come to these breakfasts. You're certainly welcome to keep coming and give us your cards, and we'll be happy to put you on the list. I also will do a quick tour of the building immediately following this program. As we always do, we like to give to the speakers a product of the scholarship of this law school, and I think I found a book that Commissioner LiMandri is going to like. It's by my colleague Beth Simone Novak, called Wiki Government: How Technology Can Make Government Better, Democracy Stronger, and Citizens More Powerful. Sounds right up your alley. Well, we thank you for... We'll see you on November 20th when Deputy Mayor Linda Gibbs will be here. Good morning.